All right. Well, welcome to the DFL Before DNF Podcast. I'm Josh from Borderlands Trail Running. I am super excited about this one today with Colby because of multiple reasons. But one of those reasons is I have a fifth grader and he is a fifth grade teacher, and he has a strong presence online around reading. And maybe he talks about books for other grade levels as well, but they just happen to catch my attention when it's something that my son might like. And so I love to consume what he's putting out there on that level. But he's also a run streaker, if you will. So it's not just about kids' books. However, if it was, I wouldn't be sad. I think this is going to be a fun conversation, so I'm super thankful. So Colby, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Josh. This is exciting. I love all the Borderlands stuff, especially. I think I don't know how many people can say this, but I've listened to every episode. I listened this morning on my run, and I'm really bad with names, but I guess I give all the episodes like my own little name. Like today I listened to the skateboarding hot sauce guy.
Oh, isn't he fun?
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that collaboration that you're going to do with former skateboarders that run.
Yeah, me too.
It's be fun.
Well, I appreciate that. And here's another thing that I admire about you, from just a little bit of due diligence on my end, is that not only are you a teacher, you've got this run streak going that we'll get into more, but you clearly have kids that you love and that you value. And I think there's 5 of them. Is that true?
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about them. What's it like being a dad of 5 kids?
It's the best. Yeah. I've taught the older 3 in class, which is amazing.
Whoa.
I teach in a small town that I actually grew up in. You can see my parents' house actually from school, which is kind of fun. So
what town are you in?
Parma. So there's probably, it's truly the one blinking light town, not even a stoplight, one blinking light town. I grew up here. My dad grew up here. He went to the same school. I teach in a classroom that I had as a kid.
No way.
Yeah, my kids get to walk home to grandma's house when they're in elementary every day after school. So that's a really fun way to grow up. But yeah, we have 5 kids from 17, 15, 13, 9, and 7.
Okay. So you haven't sent the first one off yet to college, or they haven't graduated high school yet?
Yeah, he's a high school. He's our band kid, cross country track runner. We're working the fast food Jimmy John's restaurant job, like doing all those growing up things. So it's fun.
Man, well, yeah, I say, from one dad to another, I just always admire when I see other dads just proud of their kids, and you clearly are. And so I think that's just a cool point of connection.
Good kids.
Yeah,
good kids.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about reading even before running. I mean, you clearly have a passion for it, and you go way back as someone who's been talking about it publicly and advocating for reading and advocating for authors, it looks like, also of books that you love, because you have a big platform on YouTube and Instagram. Talk to me a little bit about your passion related to reading. I mean, you're a teacher. It would be easy to have a passion like hot sauce or something that's not. What you do when you're not working maybe looks a little bit like what you do when you are working.
Yeah. Maybe. So, I was like your traditional kid. I read a lot in elementary school. Gary Paulson's Hatchet was the book that I say changed my life.
Okay.
Then I got to middle school. I read 1 book in 3 years. I got to high school. I read 1 book in 4 years.
Me too.
Then I went to a community college, and I couldn't pass the science class. It was the first time in my life I couldn't just show up to school and do well. I actually had to be able to read this textbook, and I tried, but I couldn't do it. And it was because I wasn't a good enough reader. And I made it all the way through school. I got good enough grades, but I couldn't read. And at the time, my girlfriend was a big reader, and she was getting a full ride scholarship to the small liberal arts school. She was 1 year behind me in school, and she was always reading, Count of Monte Cristo. She would have in the car when we would go on dates. And so I asked her for a book, and she kind of got me reading. She's my wife now, mother of our 5 kids. So
nice.
That's a good part of the story. But I started reading, and I got to hear all these great stories and all these magical worlds. And I was then able to do the things that I wanted in school. And I just saw the power when I became a teacher, and I wasn't maybe a very good teacher at first. It was through reading teacher books and different things that helped me to see what was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want any of my kids that I teach to have to go through what I went through in college, where I was not able to do what I dreamed to do because I wasn't a good enough reader. So that's really why I throw all my passion into that. I see the impact that reading can have on kids and
Do you remember what the
lives.
one book was in high school that you read?
Yeah, it was a biography about Bob Hurley. So I was obsessed with Bobby Hurley, the basketball player from Duke.
Okay.
He's this little point guard. And it was his dad who was a legendary Catholic high school basketball coach in New Jersey. So that was the one book that I read. Sports
Interesting.
book, yeah.
I mean, I think it's curious because you're talking about all these other books that you read, but that I think on some levels it's a fascinating conversation to say how did that one book get you compared to like being presented with all these books? Because mine was Catcher in the Rye when I was 17. That was the only book I read before the age of 18. And that one might be more obvious. Like I'm not Holden Caulfield, but I am coming of age. I am trying to figure out who I am. And I do, I felt growing up was hard and I didn't want to, I wanted to, I love sort of the childlike nature of keeping kids young. That one book captured your attention. That's just interesting to me. One of all the ones that you were presented with.
And the part of the story that I didn't say, my teacher handed it to me. She was at an event and saw the book and she says, I think that you would love to read this. And that's kind of the way that I walk into my class every day. Every day could be the day that a kid finds that book. Every day could be the day that they find their hatchet, that they find their Catcher in the Rye, that they find that book that, reading's always going to be there for a kid. And we're going to have these times, these peaks and valleys in our reading lives.
Yeah.
And if they have those books to hang on to, that Catcher in the Rye, that Hatchet, that The One and Only Ivan or Wonder, or The Wild Robot, the books that kids are reading today, they always have that foundation that they can come back to. So if we can help them to have those, a lot of people call them those heart print books, then reading is something that they can see has value in their lives when they're ready to come back to it.
And as a fifth grade teacher, I guess even in a small town, are you teaching, you're teaching every subject to a fifth grade class, right?
My teaching partner and I switch for science and social studies. So I teach all the social studies. She teaches all the science. Okay.
So then your passion for reading kind of has its moment in the day with these same kids that you see every day. So do you see with someone who's so into reading, do you see a transition in your kids from day one to, the last day of fifth grade every year in terms of reading?
Yeah. And plus I have a reputation now, like they know what they're getting when you walk into my classroom and you see 3,500 books. So from the moment they walk in, they know what we value. And I think that's a big part of it, right? Like just being excited about reading is such a big part of the battle. Just being excited about anything, right? Like the math teacher that is just nerdy about numbers is going to get kids to be excited about that. Like I'm not a great social studies teacher, but man, I get excited about the Stamp Act. Man, when we are doing the intolerable acts, I am like, this is the most exciting thing ever. Yeah. So and they're excited. My kids know authors and illustrators and books and series, as well as I would say just about any class around, because we're excited about it and we live it. And it's a community, right? Like you're such a big community guy and the community that you've built. And that's what we have. I really say there's four things. You have time to read, choice to read what you want. You have access to lots of books, and then you're part of a community. And if we can do those four things, then really great things can happen.
Wow. I don't even know where to begin. I think I'm curious where, I don't know. I don't always love the word like influencer, but like you are influencing a lot of people to see certain authors and to parents to motivate their kids to read and then motivating kids to read. Where did that start? Like from like Colby Sharp, the influencer, was that on Instagram? Was that on YouTube?
So maybe 12 years ago, I do this thing at the beginning of the year. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's this famous video of Steve Ballmer, who was like a big Microsoft guy. He owns the Clippers, where he's just like running around stage going nuts about his company. So many years, the first day of the school year, I do this thing where I talk about how I love reading. And I'm just like at a level 9 or 10 volume. I'm jumping on desk. I'm jumping from desk to desk, talking about how much I love reading. I love reading. And one year, someone filmed it.
Oh.
And then that was put on social media.
Okay.
And then that kind of got, a lot of people watched it through that way. So it was, that I love reading speech. So if you ever just Google Mr. Sharp loves reading, a much younger version of me will be hopping from desk to desk. It's,
man, I love it.
I don't know if it's aged well, but that's probably where it all started.
Okay.
And it really also started with me just learning from other teachers and getting book ideas. It was kind of like the earlier days of Twitter where we were all just like excited to be talking to each other and everything was real positive. And
yeah, that's cool. So we had a brief exchange yesterday just via email saying that, there was on your mind was, this idea of, why kids aren't exercising and running as much after they leave elementary school, or, in that also like reading being this launch pad into being a lifelong reader as well. I think even as we kind of hone in on some specifics with this conversation, I like this idea, and what I admire about you as a teacher is you're thinking, setting these kids up for life. And that feels like that should be intuitive. Like you're in elementary school and that's what you're going to do, but you're kind of laying a foundation so that when they're out of your class, you've left an impression of love for reading and perhaps running.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Like every kid just about comes to school loving to read. Right. You'll just see them. They don't even maybe know how to read the words, but they will just sit with books and turn pages and want to show everyone everything else. It's the same thing with running, right? Like you have 3 kids. Kids do not learn to walk. Like they walk so that they can run.
So that
like kids are trying to learn to run.
Yeah.
And our gym teacher, who is just amazing, they have to run the mile in 5th grade, right? For a time. And so we have this track. It's like 4 3/4 laps or something around the playground. And every lap they get a straw, right? So that they can keep track of how many laps they've done.
Yeah.
And they don't love it. They don't love it in 5th grade. So already we've taken this thing that they love to do, running, and they're already developing, being against it. But in kindergarten, at the beginning of the year, he has them run a lap just to try it. Right. And he gives them a straw at the end. And he's like, if you want to keep going, but go, or you can go play on the playground after your lap. And they all just keep running laps.
Really?
And they just keep collecting straws. And they're so excited about, like, they're just so excited to run and be outside. And right, like we have to teach them to not run. And they just want to run everywhere. And I think about like my own journey in school. I don't really know what your story is, Josh, from like your younger days as running. But mine was basically, I hated it in middle school. It's just kind of like reading, right? Yep. I remember the first week of middle school, we had to run around the gym for 3 minutes, cones at each corner. And then the next week 4, and then the next week 5, until the test at the end of the semester was, can we run for 20 minutes? And it was the worst.
Yeah.
And so that's my memory from middle school. And then in high school, 10th grade, trying out for the basketball team, we had to run 2 miles, 8 trips around the track. And I remember finishing dead last. And the next day I was cut from the junior varsity basketball team.
No.
So all I had were these awful memories around running. Just like with reading, I didn't have a lot of positive memories. I had like The Scarlet Letter that I read a page of. I had The Great Gatsby, which I read a chapter of, like all of these failed moments. And I'm just thinking like, and I have some answers with reading. I don't have the answers with running, but what if we can just like with reading, this lifelong skill, like my daughters are competitive gymnasts, practice 25 hours a week. They're not going to do gymnastics as adults. Kids are not going to play football. Very few kids even play basketball as adults, but running is something, moving your body forward is something that if we can give kids positive experiences with that and keep them running, keep them moving, it will change their life.
Yes. Yeah. My experience with running as a kid was that I was a baseball player. And so, running was punishment for, getting something wrong. Later in life, it didn't even occur to me until I made these really great friends. They were the Mowers. They're from Wisconsin, and they moved to Salt Lake City. I grew up in West Texas. I moved here when I was 19. So the Mowers were a running family, and Jackie shows up wearing a shirt that says, "My sport is your sport's punishment." And that was just like, oh, that's it. Yeah. I mean, I really got into running. There's a handful of people that were influential, but the Maurer family was among the most. And I thought, yeah, that was it. Like I always viewed it. I viewed that if I had done something wrong in baseball, and not so much that it was like, it wasn't even like deep or, angry. It was just like, oh yeah, perceptively, you push your body hard like that if you make a mistake. So let's not make a mistake in baseball, because the goal in baseball is different.
And that's not even conditioning, which, you do need for certain sports. Like that's flat out, we have to fix a problem. We're going to make you do this thing that you don't want to do.
Yes. And so by making that the thing that you do when you've done something incorrectly, it's just cast in a negative light, obviously. So it's, running is negative. And if you don't want to run, then you got to play baseball better. Yeah.
Easier said than done. Said than done.
Right. And then, I started to get obsessed with it when these really important men in my life who were mentor types were also runners. And they were like, "Hey, I don't have time for a one-on-one with you, but we're running up the canyon. Join me. Let's talk." And so we would do these hard runs with this guy named Lee. And, there was just all these people that came in. And so then to me, running became formation, like, of the whole person. So it was where I would become more healthy, but that was actually secondary because I was so interested in what these men had to give me. So running became so much deeper. And then I found ultra running. And then, I was able to kind of tie so many parts of like my ambitious personality to my desire to be formed, and all these sort of things came at this intersection of ultra running. So that's my elevator version.
So you have, and just thinking of like the positive things that you associate with running, how many positive, even though haven't finished 7 of your 800-mile runs, you still have an overwhelming amount of positive things that you can associate. So you're more likely to do it.
Yes.
So that's what I want to be able to help these kids that we serve. Like, how can we give them, they're not all going to try to run 100 miles. I don't need that, but I want them to be healthy. I want them to have things in their life where they can get that, like that time alone that you can have with yourself. Running is just, I don't think I could live without that.
Yeah. And so what about you? Running's been a hobby. Did you run in college?
No, I ran I started to run a little bit in college because I wasn't playing sports, and I was worried that I'm like getting out of shape here. So my wife was a runner. She was all-state cross country, all-state track, girlfriend at the time. So I was getting around cross country more. So I thought I would try to start running. And the goal was to run 2 miles, because if I left my house and I went south on the road my parents lived on, I would end, or the 1 mile turnaround was right before you had to go down a big hill. So I'm like, I'm never going to go farther than this, because if I go down this big hill, then I have to come back up this hill.
Right.
So I was able to work up to that. And, then kind of on and off, I would say when we started having kids is when I really started to run a lot more.
And where does this run streak come into your story?
I guess the first time I heard about the run streak was in the book Running with the Buffaloes, which follows the Colorado men's and women's cross country team for a season, and the coach. Oh,
I don't know this book.
It's probably the best running book I've ever read.
Really? Running with the Buffaloes.
And what's really interesting in so many of the running books is a lot of the character, like the people you see in like other books, like this, Adam Goucher is in this book, right? Who now is, I guess, often referred to as Kara Goucher's.
Yes, that's how I know the name.
It's Kara Goucher's husband. He was a multiple-time national champion at Colorado. But the coach had a running streak, and I remember he needed hernia surgery, but he decided not to get it because it would affect his streak. I'm like, well, that's different than how I run. And then I saw just some people online who did it. I had a teacher friend who I saw he was trying to do it for a year. And then, August 4th, 2019, I started running. I feel like Forrest Gump here. I just started running. And then I tried to do it for a month. And then when COVID came, like really came in March. That was really like the only way for me to kind of get out of the house and have some normalcy in my life. But yeah, every day. So I'm not like, there's people who have way longer streaks, but I'm over 1,600, between 1,600 and 1,700 days every day, every single school day, but maybe 1 or 2 a school year is in the morning. So it's always 4 a.m. alarm, out the door.
Okay.
6 miles is pretty much every day.
Really? Okay. That's what I was going to say. Like in a run streak, like, what about like you're traveling for some reason, you're in an airport. I've seen run streakers running through airports before, trying to keep it alive. Like, what are some of the crazier things you've had to do to keep it alive?
My wife and I celebrated our 20th anniversary last year in St. Lucia. Nice. And the day before we were supposed to fly home, a tropical storm hit. And I was all the power went out, the sound, the wind. And so I ran for like 50 minutes at like 1 a.m. just to try to, cause I couldn't sleep. So I just like ran around our Airbnb just nonstop. So I don't have
Strava by chance.
That one's not on Strava, but
love to see that.
Most of the other ones, I think I only marked it as like a mile because I didn't want to like cheat or anything. But it's that was probably the hardest. It's hard when we're like, our daughters have like gymnastics meets and things in different states. Those are the hardest. Like a Saturday, if I have to get up at like 5 a.m. to run from a hotel, that's tricky. I bet it's actually become easier at home to run than to not run.
I bet.
If I don't do it in the morning, if I don't do it in the morning, I worry about it and I think about it. So it's best to just.
What time are you going to bed if you're getting up at 4 and able to run?
I don't know, like 10:30, 11 o'clock. Okay.
So you're able to, I mean, are you extroverted or you don't need as much sleep maybe?
I really like the sleep, but I mean, I'm fine. We have 5 kids, right? Like we have all that training of not having a lot of time to sleep.
So with your youngest being sleep trained, at this point, there is this thing, wherever it comes from, evolutionary biology, whatever, we've evolved to be able to handle less sleep than we think. Yeah. You learn that among other places if you have kids. And so what you're saying is maybe on some level you kept that alive. Like you didn't let that, strength, I would say, of needing less sleep atrophy after your kids got older.
Yeah. And I try to make all of like the running and all of like the social media stuff I do with books, I try to make that have as little impact on my family as possible. So 90% of my runs are done before, people at the worst, people are just waking up. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm similar. I'm similar though different. So I will wake up now at 4:30, but it's to do a lot of work so that when I go on my run in the middle of the day, I'm not sacrificing family, but I'll go in the middle of the day, but it's because my job is flexible enough where I can put in a couple hours before kids are awake, before anybody's awake. So I'm not good at getting out the door and going for that run at 4:30, but I am good at getting up at 4:30 and working. So that's my trade-off.
Yeah. I think you have to balance and figure that out. And there's nothing wrong with like running when my kids are awake. Like you need that time and you need to like take care of yourself. So for me, that seems to work, and then I don't have to think about it. I always tell people like that are trying to work out, like if you just do it in the morning, it's done. Yeah. And then if you don't get it done, there's time. But if you wait till later in the day and something comes up, then you just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like today is kind of a funny day for me. Like I've got, I'm doing 3 of these interviews today to roll out over the next few days. I had coffee with an old friend this morning. And I teach a class at the University of Utah on Thursday nights for 3 hours. And nice. I've got to run 10 miles today. I'm trying to. So it's one of those days,
Yeah. You just figure it out though.
Yeah. And we're capable of doing it. And it helps for me, when we talk about ambition as a parent, wanting to be a good father and wanting to be a good husband, but to have a partner like my wife who gets me. Yeah. Like that's important. Can't be understated.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I have no plans to run a 100-mile run, but my wife is running 100 this summer.
Yes. Okay. Great.
some Tahoe rim thing.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
rim
know.
trail. Yeah,
Yes.
Tahoe 100.
So what is your advice for me? Like, there's lots of advice for her out there. Like,
Oh my gosh.
you ran these races, you've been crewed by people. Like, what do I need to do to be? Because I love, like, I've crewed her in the backyard ultras. I've crewed
Okay.
her at 50 miles, but like, this is different. Like,
What a great
it's
question.
more than twice as long, right? Because you're not going to be running as fast as. So I don't really know. I can't like envision what that time looks like for me.
Are you her crew chief?
I am the only person coming.
Love it. So you've got
Yes.
reliable babysitters and,
Yes.
that are,
yeah.
okay.
It'll be like our anniversary summer trip. Yeah.
Oh gosh. First off, I love you. This is great. Like that you're doing this, and thinking this way, like that this is what you guys are doing when you're, for fun together. When I think about that, so for so long I hadn't been on a crew until a buddy of mine, Cordell, asked me to pace him at some races. And man, I just think that first off, I get kind of romantic with my language in this space, but it's like, it's sacred space to be in suffering with somebody, regardless of if it's voluntary or not. So first off, like, and you say this is her first 100-miler?
First 100-mile. Yeah.
Yeah. She's going to encounter something in herself that she's never met before. And so one of the key things abstractly is to have grace on her when you encounter her, and perhaps you don't recognize the person that's before you. And this is late race. This is middle of the night. This is desire to quit kind of.
Yeah.
If she goes there mentally. I was just talking to the guy who's going to be the crew chief for me at Zion coming up. And, I'm not externally motivated. So for me, the trick is we've got to have a lot of conversations leading up to say, hey, how do we put all the stuff in me that I can pull from, and how can he help me pull from what's inside of me, instead of, he's not going to be able to say, hey, get up, you can do it. Unfortunately, I don't hear that.
Okay.
And that could be a problem, I'm willing to admit. But if there's a well within me that we can grab stuff out of, so what we're trying to do is fill that well up. So one question I would have for her is, big picture, are you externally motivated or internally motivated? If you're externally, let's talk about how I can encourage you, how I can coach you, how I can push you. When you say you want to stop, do you want me to tell you to keep going? Do you want me to get in your face? Or do you want me to put my arm around you and say, if I were in this situation, I'd want to stop too. I get it. Like, does she want to be understood? And this is also like marriage 101, I guess. Like, do you want to be understood right now? Or do you want me to push your ass out there and like, are we going to finish this thing? Or if you want to stop, like, what type of partner do you need? A lot of it. And she also won't be able to answer it. But just to say, like, hey, we're talking about, and then you get to this moment of like, okay, she doesn't want this. She does want this. She, one of the things that people do for me that is fun, even if it's not motivating, is showing up with snacks that I didn't ask for. So it's like, hey, I thought here's, like, have 10 things in your pack. Like, when she shows up, she knows what she wants. She has her race plan, and just say, hey, I also brought these things. And she may say no to all of them, but for me, that's just kind of fun. It's like, variety, because there's going to be flavor palate fatigue of all the stuff that she thinks that she wants.
Yeah.
So really it's like, imagine that you're showing up with 100% of yourself, and you like, of what you think is enough. Here's 100% of Colby, but what she's actually going to need is 150% of you. And that other 50% you won't know until the moment.
Okay.
So to just be like, I'm here for whatever it means to be here. And, like having your first aid kit of goodies that, and that first aid kit is both anything from Vaseline to Oreos or whatever she likes, or, the things that might bring her delight at mile 80. It's such a cool experience. I mean, that sacred space of being with someone when they're suffering, whether it's voluntarily or not, is so special.
Well, how do you feel about bringing so many more people along this time then? Because you are, you've had your races that you haven't finished and the race that you did finish, but now you're bringing along this entire community.
Yeah.
And there's expectations, and I don't know if there's you feel pressure Or
Well,
what is that? Like, that's quite bold.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel like one thing I haven't done is burn the ships, so to speak, where it's like, I'm finishing. Because I am kind of happy within myself and I don't need external things I don't need the awards to feel validated within myself. Like there's this, I feel like very like okay within myself. So if I quit, whatever. Well, I don't want to do that this time. So one is it's like opening it up to the whole world. I'm doing this. I'm seeking advice. And most of that advice comes down to just a few things. But one is being convinced within your own mind that you're going to finish. I still struggle with that to this moment. But bringing them all in is also, there's a part of me that the people I love, even though I'm introverted, so I don't have a wide circle, but the people that I love, I just love being with them. So I've got my friend Alex, one of my best friends from high school, Ryan, and then my good friend Jeremy, who's been in a lot of different things. Jeremy's former Navy, Alex is currently in the Air Force, and Ryan is a former Green Beret or Army Ranger. So I'm trying to tap into that. The joy of being with them will be one thing. The next thing will be they're all bringing this military mindset that hopefully I can pick up the crumbs of their determination.
That you don't listen to, that you don't need.
I know.
So let's just,
I'm trying to get through osmosis.
Do you think you're going to finish?
This time I do. This time I think.
Let's go, Josh.
So, since you've listened to some of the stuff, there's the Matt Johnson's makes me laugh, but it also was a good moment of like self-awareness. It's like saying that I'm the best and then finishing 976th and then saying, see, I told you I'm the best. I think that to me was one of the more like, oh, okay. So he's like this kind of arrogant coming off guy, but he's really just saying, I'm not literally the best. I know that, but I need to tell myself better things than what I currently tell myself because the current messages in my mind are not working. They are not good for anybody. So if I can work on this self-talk piece of like, hey, I am good. I can do this. I don't know if I could ever say I'm the best, but to be like, I am good. I am strong. I should be able to do this. There's no reason I can't do this unless I get a legit injury. So I'm going to finish.
So of the 7 you haven't finished physically, how many do you think you could have finished?
I think of the 7, I think if I try and be objective on them, I think 3 of them I legit could have kept going. I think my first one, which set the tone, which I DNF'd, that set the tone. I made it to mile 78. I ran out of water, and my pacer for 16 miles, he didn't bring water. He wasn't an ultra guy, but he's an old road marathoner. He's like, I wish I would have thought to bring water even for myself. It was only 16 miles, and so I didn't think I would need water. And I was like, so
wah, wah.
Yeah. So they all have their stories, but I think there's a few that was just like my brain is my biggest weakness. My self-messaging, all this sort of stuff is the key takeaway for me. And it will make me a better ultra runner, which ultimately, because I'm not elite, my greatest goal for being a good ultra runner is becoming a better person. And I think that this self-talk thing is taking me in the right direction.
You got this, Josh.
I love thank you for asking me questions. That was nice.
It's just so exciting. Like, I don't know, all this like running stuff. It's just, I just can't stop thinking like a couple of weeks. I ran my first 50K last year. It was
nice.
It was like 30 people, 24 people. Right. And it was awesome. And then like I've run a couple 5Ks lately. There's like 300 people, and just, I've been to the backyards with my wife and big ultras with my wife, and it's just all awesome. This is why running with young kids is so great, because it's just magical. Like watching every 5K that I've been to, they always ask the same question: whose first 5K is this? Yeah. And there's always a bunch of hands that go up, and just like the thought that they have an opportunity to join this community that has given us so much. Yeah. It's just so exciting.
It is. That's a good note to end on, and to let you, for everyone listening, needs to know that you're on your lunch break
Gotta go get the kids from recess. Yeah.
And you're about to get the kids from recess. And that's so generous of you to give what would normally be maybe some good downtime or something for you. So thank you so much for
appreciate you, Josh.
sharing
Thanks,
your time. And I can't wait to hear how your wife does that race and how you do as pacer. I mean, I think that's a legit thing. Like, as a crew, whatever, like making sure you take care of yourself. Yeah.
Got this.
All right.
Thanks, Josh.
Well, cheers. Thank you.
See you, man. Thank you.
See you. Bye.